Things could be stranger, but I don't know how. I'm going through my changes now. Did you catch that opening line Gabby sang so beautifully? It just about says it all, doesn't it? Things could be stranger, but I don't know how. I'm going through my changes now. And so we are. This week, a friend sent me an image of a visual calendar for 2020 with a different photo depicting each month. Maybe you've seen it too. For January, it was fires in Australia. For February, swarms of locusts in Kenya. For March through May, the global pandemic. The month of June marked with protests and riots. And the coming months, with some wild and maybe not so wild speculation, include everything from solar flares and an asteroid hit to massive volcanic eruptions, and in September, an alien invasion complete with flying saucers. Things could be stranger, but I don't know how. It's been quite a year so far, and we're not even halfway through it. I remember seeing a meme on Facebook in mid-March that said, "Before the 90-day warranty expires, I want a refund for 2020. Mid-March now feels like half a lifetime ago, rather than the 3 long months it's been since the pandemic demanded our undivided attention and upended so much of daily life. And then 3 weeks ago, just as spring was finally kicking in, and a few aspects of life beginning to return to normal, or at least our very weird new normal, the murder of George Floyd rocked the world. Some have taken it as a wake-up call. It's been even called a great awakening as people everywhere are stirred to a new awareness of both the legacy and present reality of systemic racism and the police brutality that is so often feeds in the US, in Canada, and elsewhere around the globe. But for all of the waking up going on right now, there are also people, so many of them Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, who are rightly wondering why it took so long, wondering where the rest of us have been, wondering why our society has slept through so many other alarms, wondering why we've been roused from our slumber from time to time when the murder of a Black or brown person makes the news, but pressing the snooze button and drifting back off to sleep. These people understandably wonder whether this time will be any different. That is the pressing question of the moment that we are in. Will this time be different? Will this time be any different from all of the other times? I want to acknowledge right up front that this is no idle question for people of color, and that there is a legacy of pain centuries in the making that goes into this question. Because to ask if this time will be different is also to ask yet again if Black lives really matter, if Indigenous lives really matter, if the lives of people of color really matter. This question cannot go unanswered. And to be clear, a non-answer is indeed an answer, just as it too often has been. But here's the thing, each of us has to answer the question this time, and especially those of us who are white. It might be tempting to press the snooze button and roll back over to go to sleep, to allow ourselves the luxury of distraction from an issue that is, as we have seen once again, quite literally a matter of life and death. We must resist that temptation, resist the temptation to sleepwalk through history. Again, to avoid the question of whether this time will be different, to keep silent, to not offer an answer either way, to passively hope it will just all somehow work out, is in fact to give an answer. It's just not an answer that is very helpful. For this time to be different, there is no room for indifference. This doesn't mean everyone has to head out to protest in the streets, in a pandemic no less. But it does mean, I believe, that we have to make a conscious, intentional choice, as many others have said in recent days, not only to not be racist, but to actively work to be anti-racist. And let's be honest, for those of us who are white, this is real work. To work at being anti-racist means educating ourselves about the reality of racism and then actually doing something about it. It means actively working to dismantle racism in our society, in the world that we navigate on a daily basis, in our congregation, in our social circles, and in ourselves. It means listening and learning. At times, it means speaking up, and at other times, keeping quiet. It means cultivating some humility in all of this, and some capacity to make mistakes, and then to receive feedback graciously. Did I mention that this would be work for some of us? The beauty of becoming anti-racist is that you are not expected to be perfect, but you are expected to be on a journey with a clear destination to help dismantle racism both within and without. In his book, How to Be Anti-Racist, Ibram X. Kendi argues that the opposite of racist isn't not racist, but instead anti-racist. To explain his sense of things and the choice it presents, he writes, "There is no such thing as a not racist policy, idea, or person. All policies, ideas, and people are either being racist or being anti-racist. Racist policies yield racial inequity. Anti-racist policies yield racial equity. Racist ideas suggest racial hierarchy. Anti-racist ideas suggest racial equality. A racist is supporting racist policy or expressing a racist idea. An anti-racist is supporting anti-racist policy or expressing an anti-racist idea. A racist or anti-racist is not who we are, but what we are doing in the moment." Kendi's call to action is a call to do something, to overcome apathy or indifference, to understand our choices on a daily basis, to examine our own behavior, and to choose the anti-racist path over and over again. But do you know what the hardest part of becoming anti-racist is for white liberals? It is mistakenly believing that we are already there somehow, that we've already arrived and that our work is somehow done. It often shows up in unhelpful ways as we work hard to prove just how very not racist we are. I witnessed this a lot in my social circles, in our congregation, in Unitarian Universalism writ large, and not least in myself. No one wants to be labeled a racist. But as Kendi reminds us, the goal isn't to be not racist, which is an arguably impossible thing to do, given that we humans are prone to implicit bias and exist within systems and structures that are indeed racist. Instead, the goal is to become anti-racist, working to build an anti-racist society. As important as this external work is, though, it has to involve some real internal work, some real soul work. Getting to this point, Black philosopher and activist Cornel West addressed a large gathering of Unitarian Universalists at the UUA General Assembly in 2015. At one point, he shared the following quote from W.E.B. Du Bois: "I want to keep track of the integrity, beginning with the intellectual integrity. Who is willing to tell the truth, good and bad, up and down, insights as well as blindnesses, of ourselves first, and then our communities, then our nation, then our world." Dr. West then went on to say, "I've got a lot of vanilla brothers and sisters that walk with me and say, Brother West, you know I'm not racist any longer. I mean, my grandma's got work to do, but I've transcended all of that." And then he said, "I say to them that I am a Jesus-loving free Black man, and I have tried to be so for 55 years. And when I look into the depths of my soul, I see white supremacy, because I grew up in this context. And if there is white supremacy in me, my hunch is that you've got some work to do too. Earlier, I said that the defining question of this larger moment is whether or not this time will be different. The answer to that question isn't a simple yes or no. On some level, no one can know with any certainty how things are going to ultimately turn out. But we can set our resolve to move in the direction of a society that is truly just and truly equitable. One of the central ideas of what is known as process theology is that we are co-creators, co-collaborators with all living things. Together in each unfolding moment, we are making and remaking the world. The possibilities are endless, but the path we set for ourselves, the direction, the trajectory of our intention makes a difference, because our actions build one upon another to make the world. We are at a crossroads, a moment when we are being asked to commit to one path over another. The pandemic has revealed many harsh realities about our society. It has pulled back the curtain and shown that inequality is a major factor in who is most affected by the coronavirus, even in our very own city. People of color and the working poor have been hit hardest, and we must grapple with the moral question of why that is. Likewise, the recent wave of protest against racial injustice have reminded us yet again of the staggering disparities that so negatively impact the lives of those who are Black or brown or Indigenous. We must grapple with the moral question of why they are subject to police violence and so many forms of violence. We must grapple with the moral question of why the Ontario Human Rights Commission reported in 2018 that Black people in the city of Toronto are 20 times more likely to be killed by police than white people. And we must grapple with the moral question of what policing has meant in this country in the past and what it means today, especially when excessive and lethal force is so disproportionately directed to people of color. It's often been said in recent months that post-pandemic life will be a new normal. I certainly hope so, because it is becoming obvious in ways that we can no longer deny that the old normal failed to serve so many and that it has failed to serve life. This is, of course, old news to so many of us who have dedicated much of the energy of our lives to trying to build a different and better world. But with multiple crises that we are now facing, we are being presented with a rare opportunity to choose the better path. The pandemic, the economic crisis, and the protest against racism are providing us with an opening to set out in another direction. As Dallas mentioned earlier, this afternoon at 12:30, Leslie Solomonian and I will host a congregational conversation about a new initiative called A Just Recovery for All. It's one Canada-wide effort to try to bring people together around a compelling vision of how we want the future to be different from our past and our present. Though it is just one piece of a larger puzzle, this call to seek the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible is one way to leverage hope and vision in this moment. It's been said that one should never let a crisis go to waste. We now have three, which are deeply intertwined, and which in unprecedented ways open up a world of possibilities. This confluence of opportunity may not come our way again, so let us make the most of this moment by declaring in thought, word, and deed that this time will in fact be different. May we strive on to make it so.